Hello everyone, my name is Austin Shaner and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me on my third episode of how to build a guitar in Fusion 360. For those of you just joining us, I'm going to do a real quick recap. So in episode 1, we laid out some of our foundational sketches. So we did our fretboard schematic, I showed you how to draw a rough headstock, and we also drew in the body. And the whole point of that, doing all those sketches up front, was so that we could set ourselves up for success in the rest of the model. In episode 2, we did our first extrusion, so we got the main thickness of the body in place. We got our neck pocket cut, and then we started talking about how we were going to shape the body, and that had some additional constraints that we had to think about. So I needed to actually take a little bit of a diversion and talk about how lofting works, and I went into that in quite great detail. So if you haven't seen that episode, I really recommend that you watch that before this one, because today we're going to really put that tool to work. And so what I'm hoping to do, let me pull up my model here, is I'm really hoping to get the majority of this body modeled and then start working on the neck transition here, this back relief cut and the neck transition. Hopefully I'll have time to do all that. So what I'm going to try to do, if I can, is when it comes to shaping the body, I might not do quite as much explaining as I normally do. Now that, because I've done a lot of that in the last episode. So hopefully today we can really put some work in and get the body done. That being said, if you see me doing something that you didn't quite understand and I didn't explain it, please leave me a comment down below and I will make sure I answer that for you. All right, let's get to work. Before we start cutting into the body, we really have one more decision to make. Are we going to build our guitar body out of one material, such as mahogany or maple, or for you masochists out there, aluminum or steel? Some people do it. Or are we going to build it out of two types of materials, such as a laminated top guitar? So like in my design, I have a walnut top and a mahogany bottom. Or you could have like a maple top and a walnut bottom. It doesn't matter. It could be the same material. It's really whatever you prefer. But for those of you who would like to go this route, there's one extra step that we need to do before we start cutting into the top. We need to actually create this as a new component. So that way we can cut through both at the same time and also apply a different appearance to each one. So that way you get the look you want in the end. I realize for those of you who want to build this out of a single material, this might be an unnecessary step. But for those of you who do want to go that route, I think it's worth showing you how to do this first. The keen-eyed observers among you might notice that actually my neck is sitting a little bit proud of my body and actually my fretboard sketch. Now in episode 2, we actually extruded it directly from the fretboard sketch. Those two are coplanar, and that actually presents a problem because the neck typically wants to sit a little bit proud of the body because you'll also have the 1/4-inch fretboard on top. And that is, if you're, like I said in the first or second video, if you're using a hip shot bridge, that'll give you the right string height. So what we actually need to do is come in here and we need to correct that. So we need to extrude this down away from the fretboard sketch by at least, so by 1/8 of an inch if you're going to be building the body out of one material. And if you're going to be building the body out of two materials like a laminated top, you'll want to do 1/8 of an inch plus the thickness of your laminated top. So again, if you'd like to just do one style body, you bring that down 1/8 of an inch, and then you can actually come back to your neck pocket and bring that down an additional 1/8 of an inch. Oop, I messed that up. So we'll go 0.75. So what that does is that maintains our 5/8 depth on the neck, but it also brings this down by about 1/8 of an inch, so that way the neck sits a little bit proud. For those of you who are doing the split top or the laminated top, what we just need to do is come back to this cut, or sorry, this offset, and we'll go the thickness of the material for the laminated top plus 1/8 of an inch. So if we use a 1/4-inch laminated top, we'll go -0.375. Creating the laminated top is actually very easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new component. So let's go create new component. Just hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sketch on this top surface of the body that we just offset and corrected. Now let's click on the main surface, and notice it's not picking up the neck pocket, which is good. So let's hit P for project, bring that into our sketch, hit Q on your keyboard for press pull, or you can go solid extrude, grab that face, and come up the thickness of your laminated top, so 0.25. So now you'll notice we actually have two separate pieces here, and this already has the shape of the body that we created in episode 2. You'll notice, however, that it can move. So we need to make sure that's joined to the body. So click that face and this face, come up, hit assemble joint, and it'll automatically snap because it's exactly the same shape. It'll snap on center. So we can just hit OK. So now we've actually got our laminated top, our bottom, and we've got the gap here for the neck. Now, to make things a bit easier on us going forward, I personally like to go ahead and apply either a color or an appearance to that laminated top. So that way when I'm cutting through everything, I can clearly identify what portions I'm seeing. Because sometimes when everything's the same color, it kind of all blends together and you kind of lose track of just like the proportions of everything. So let's go ahead and hit A on our keyboard and let's grab an appearance. You can apply a wood appearance at this point if you'd like, or whatever material you're using, but I'm just going to pick a color. So I'm just going to grab green. Let's go paint green. Now I'm going to change this later, of course, but what that does is it just gives us some really nice contrast, so that way we can clearly visualize what's happening in the cut. All right, let's start cutting. So first things first, I'm going to lay out the rails. Like in episode 2, I prefer to do the rails first when it comes to the body, but you can draw the profiles if you'd like, if that's the direction you want to go. But like I showed with the 3-point plane method, that seems to work really well for the body, so let's go ahead and do that. So let me hit sketch, and we'll sketch on top of the laminated top, or on top of your unified surface if that's the direction you went. So let's go ahead and first, before we do anything, click the surface, hit P, and project that into the sketch. So now let's hit arc, and let's start getting a rough shape in place before we add any dimensions. So there. So those two are tangent, but it doesn't know where it is in space yet. So this line can move, this point can move, this point can move, and these two radiuses haven't been defined yet. So let's give this a radius of 5 inches. Actually, let's step back. See, sometimes when you just start adding dimensions, things can go crazy. So we need to constrain this a little bit. So I know, at least for my personal taste, I would like this point to come straight out, kind of in a perpendicular fashion, out from these two arcs. But there's not really a good way of defining where that is, because you don't have two straight lines, you have two arcs. So how do you do that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to create a triangle, and I'm going to make these two line segments equal, and I'm going to make each one of these tangent to that circle that it's closest to. And what that does is it gives me kind of like a projected view. If you imagine like your eye looking out, there's a center line somewhere in there. So if I draw from this point to that center mark, I now have the center point between those two. So let me make these construction lines, and let's make this coincident to that point. So that point is going to end directly in line with where these two arcs meet. Let's say if I offset those two. So let's go ahead and give that a dimension of, let's say, 1 inch. And so that's where that line is going to start. Now we can probably start messing with the constraints here. So let's dimension from this point to this point. Let's do 0.625. And let's give this a radius. Let's say 5 inches. I want it to be up a little higher. That's starting to look pretty good, but where are we missing? It's not black yet. Okay, so this radius can still change, and this point can still move. I bet if I just defined that point, it'll fully constrain everything. So let's dimension between these two. Let's do 1 1/4. And I bet it can still move down. Yep. So let's dimension between those two, 1.25. Perfect. Okay, so now we have a fully defined top rail. In order to save the amount of sketches that we're going to make, because we're going to make a lot of sketches in this design, I'm going to draw both rails on the same sketch. You can actually do that and just only use a portion of that rail or a portion of that line for the rail. So let me start the next one. So let's go here like that. Start getting some rough lines in place like we did before. And like that. And let's come all the way down to here. Let's delete some of these tangencies real quick, so that way we don't get a little messed up. Now, where do we want this point to fall, and what do we want this diameter to be? Let's make these two concentric. Okay, so that way they're equal. And we can see actually a line here drawing straight from here. So that's actually what I'm going to do, is I'm going to draw a line from here and a line to this point. Make these both construction lines and make those collinear. So that way it's drawing a straight line from the center of that arc through the edge of this one and into the edge of this one. And that's giving me a nice concentric shape there, and easy to define, which is nice. Okay, so let's start working on the bottom. The more that I'm looking at this, I actually am just going to delete these two right here, because I have a feeling that as I start giving those dimensions, they're going to start, creating big circles and going everywhere. So let's define our two endpoints first, and so that way it's much easier to constrain the ones in the middle. So let's go ahead and make this one concentric to that. Let's bring that up, and let's define the distance between these 2 points. So let's do the same thing we did above as 0.625. And let's make this vertical to here. Okay, so that's fully defined. Let's make these two concentric and do something kind of similar. I'm going to leave this one open for now because I don't know where I want the bottom of that arc to land. So let's hit arc. And let's draw between here. Let's make sure that's tangent. Yep, that's tangent to there. And let's draw from here to here. And let's do that. And let's make these two tangent and these two tangent. Okay. So now we kind of have the same situation we had above, where this point can move and that point can move. So where do we want that to fall? So let's find some easy points that we can identify here. Let's make the center of this arc vertical to the center of that arc. And then let's draw a line from here to the edge and make these two tangent. Okay. So now what we need to do. Actually, I changed my mind. So we're going to delete this line. And what we're going to do is we're just going to dimension this radius here. I think that's going to be, that's going to be way easier. So let's give that, let's see, 2 inches. Nope, that's too much. Let's do 1.75. That looks pretty good, actually. So we've got a nice cut here, and it gets a little bit bigger down at those bottom radiuses and comes in. I'm pretty happy with that. So going over this again, I know I rushed through this, and I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I'm going to rush through some of this, but basically I drew some arcs, and I clearly identified where this point that's just in midair is going to land, and then I started constraining everything. And that's going to give me some pretty nice rails to work with. So let's go ahead and hit Finish Sketch. And just like in video 2, we now have a rail here. We have a rail here. We have a rail going all the way around here. And that's going to set a nice foundation for us to draw some triangles and cut through. So the next thing we need to do is we need to establish our plane somewhere lower. So let's go ahead and hit Offset Plane from the top surface. And we know since we're doing a laminated top, we want it to cut through both surfaces. So it at least has to be the thickness of the laminated top. So let's actually just double that. Let's go to negative 0.5 inches. Hit OK. Now we've got a surface that'll cut through a 1/4 inch of the base material and a 1/4 inch of the laminated top. Let's go ahead and hit sketch. Let's click. Let's actually select these lines instead of the face now that we have multiple bodies there. Hit P for project. And now we've got our rail here on the bottom. So we've got 3 points here, potentially 3 points here. I might need to add another point there. Same thing here, same thing here, all the way around. Probably need to add a point there and a point there. So let's go back to our sketch. Let's set ourselves up for a loft. Actually, that's the other one. Okay, so let's make sure we add some points. This is probably not necessary because you can typically grab off these locations, but I want to add a point to be sure that those are all going to land where I want them to. So let's add a point here. Let's add a point, no. Add a point here. Add a point there. So we have a triangle here, triangle here, triangle there. This one might be a little tricky where I can add a point to. I'll have to come back to that. Okay, hit finish. And let's go back to this sketch. And let's make sure we have enough points there. So yep, we've got 1, 2, 3. This one might get a little tricky. We'll have to play with that a bit later. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. I didn't add one there, so let's go back. Add a point to here. So now we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try that for now. And if we need to come back and fix this one, we can. So I'm already noticing something. So if I create a triangle between these three right here, let's look at this from the top view. Imagine I drew a straight line between these. That's actually going to clip off this little radius here. So I'm actually going to have to extend these lines out a little bit, so that way the cut starts on the outside of the body and goes in rather than starts on the inside of the body, because then I'll have a little bit of material here that never got cut. So let's go back to our sketch. Actually, the first one. There we go. Create 2 more arcs. Let's draw like that. Tangent and tangent. Let's make sure these are concentric. And let's make sure this one is concentric. Oh, I'm just going to delete that one and try again. Create arc. Make sure this is concentric. There we go. And let's go ahead and make these 2 vertical to each other. So vertical. Okay. And then let's define how far away from this surface is that going to be. Let's just say 0.5. Okay. And then let's come up here. I don't think I need to do it on this one because this one comes tangent, but I'm going to do it anyway just to be sure so I don't have to do extra work later. So I'm going to extend these ones out as well. Come out here. Let's make these tangent and concentric. Ooh, okay. There we go. Bring that back in. These 2 tangent, that's already tangent, and concentric. Make these 2 vertical and define from our shortest point, 0.5. Okay. Now we need to go back to the other sketch and make sure those are also projected in. So project and project. So that way on the endpoints we have 3 points here and 3 points here. Okay. I think we're almost ready to start cutting. All right, this might be the most tedious step, but I'm going to go ahead and add in the planes and start connecting all the dots. So let's go construct plane at 3 points from here, here, and here. Hit OK. Construct plane through 3 points between here, here, and here. OK. I'm just going to go ahead and do this to every one of these. Now, you might not actually need to do that. You might try it first by seeing how it interacts without having to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just draw it at every one that I have a solid 3 points at. So bear with me here for a second. And through 3 points. These three. Between these three. We're going to skip that one for now. Still might have to come back to it later. Through 3 points here, here, and here. Plane through 3 points here, here, and here. Come around, do these ones. 3 points. Oop, undo. Let's hide the body. It's not letting me select it. Come on. Construct plane through 3 points here, here, and here. There we go. Okay, that should give us more than enough to get started, and then we can see how it's interacting a little bit later. So let's go ahead and hit sketch on this one and connect the dots. There we go. Oh. I apologize if this is going to take a little while. This is the most tedious part of lofting, in my opinion, is to get all these connected. So bear with me here. I might do a time lapse. Phew, that took a while. Thank you for bearing with me on that. So let's go ahead and try to loft. Now, one thing I want to note before we do this is that I'm going to do this in 2 lofts, and I want to explain why. So lofts really like to have a smooth trajectory from one place to another. They don't really like to change directions abruptly. So you'll notice I've got straight tangent lines going all the way through. They're all connected up until here, and then it goes a vastly different direction. That's a good indicator for me that I need to do this in 2 lofts. There are ways to do that in a single loft, but generally not when you're trying to follow a path like this. If you were to do it that way, you'd probably want to use this whole surface as one of your profiles and then draw construction lines down vertically to here and loft between those 2 surfaces. That's totally doable, and that's a valid way of doing this. I personally prefer this method because I have more control over the shape, I feel like. So let's go ahead and try to set up our loft. But first, let's come up here. Let's hide our bodies. Actually, we need to show this, but we need to hide that body. Okay. Create loft. We want to go from this triangle to this triangle to that triangle to this one. Remember, we're doing these in order from here up until there. Okay. Now, I just noticed something that I missed, and this happens quite a lot when you're doing lofting. I don't have an arc coming from here to here. Somehow that did not get projected in. So I need to cancel. I need to go back to that sketch, which I believe is right here. Let's see. Where did I insert my plane? Okay, it's this sketch right here. Somehow this line did not get projected in. Okay, good. So now my rail goes all the way to the end. So let's go back and let's loft this again. Create loft from here to here to here to here, all the way around. to here, to there. Okay, now it's not finished yet. We got to add our rails. So let's go guide type, rails, not center line. And let's keep chain selection on for now and see what happens. So let's go. No, it's not liking it. Why is that not grabbing it? Oh, I'm just an idiot. Okay. Chain selection. Nope, not gonna like it. Let's do that one. That one. Now it's telling you it's missing between these points. So that one, this one, and that one. Okay. That one should be good. So now let's grab a new rail right here, 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 and here. And let's grab a third rail and go from here to here to here, 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 and grab that last one. Okay, let's bring our bodies back. That's looking pretty good. I might have done this on the first try. Okay, hit OK. Let's let this cut. Okay. Let's take a closer look at this. Make sure we didn't miss anything. So we've got a nice clean triangle there. Do we have any cusps anywhere? That actually turned out really nice. Okay, we got a little one right there. I'm not too concerned about that, to be honest. I think that's because we didn't have another triangle forcing this into shape. So you can see here I had a straight line. This one's a little squiggly. I might go back and fix that a little bit later, but I think I'm going to move on for now. Okay, so let's do the second loft. So let's hide these bodies again. And let's go show all these sketches. And let's loft number 2. Create loft from this triangle to this one, to this one, to that one. And let's do our rails. So from here to here to there. Rail number 2 is from here to there to there. And rail number 3 is from here to here to there. Okay, I think that's going to work. Let's go unhide our bodies. Make sure everything's cutting. Yep, it's creating a nice crisp line there. This one's looking pretty good. I think we did all right. Okay. Let's close it out. Let's hide our sketches. Let's see what we've got. Awesome. So yeah, I think long term, I'm going to have to go ahead and fix that line because I didn't define it. So it's warping a little bit around that corner. You can see that curve there. But everything else that I defined looks really nice. So I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and project that. Actually, not project. That's the wrong term. Let's mirror these lofts to the back side, so that we don't have to do our work twice. Now, some designs will have unique cuts on both the back and the front. In my particular design, I wanted to have the same cuts on both sides. So it would thin it out at my shoulder area and thin it out at my leg without it being, a big swooping cut like you see on like fenders and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mid plane. So let's go construct mid plane between here and here. Okay, you can see it's a little bit lower because we went down a quarter and a quarter. It looks like we've got maybe 3/16 or something in between there. So let's hit OK. And what I want to do is I want to take these two lofted features, click both, hold shift and click both of those, come up to create mirror, hit mirror plane. That's going to be the mid plane that we just chose. And you can see what it's going to do. It might be kind of hard to see here, but it's going to take those exact cuts and mirror them to the other side of the design. So let's see. I'm going to change this to optimize so it makes sure it cuts. Let's see what happens. I'll be right back with you. My computer's frozen.
2 hours later.
All right, I'm finally back. That took forever, and I think I might have figured out why my computer kept freezing. So sometimes when you do a mirror, there are different types of compute options, and optimized is typically the fastest because it just kind of mirrors the faces over. I think that was the wrong choice in my case because I actually had two competing faces because I had the laminated top and the body, and it was trying to add those faces to the other side. Whereas when I did adjust, it computed almost right away, but it took me probably 12 times restarting Fusion 360 and I finally got it. So sometimes Fusion just does not like the answer and cannot solve it, or like what you're trying to do and can't solve it. So that's how I ended up doing it. It finally worked, and I finally got those relief cuts on the backside. Let me hide the construction plane and you can see what happened. Now, I would like to also point out that this is a good lesson. So make sure you always save your documents because in that time, on the original crash, and I restarted it, I hadn't saved it and I had to actually go back in and redo my lofts. Thankfully, I didn't have to redo all of my sketches, but I had to redo my lofts and fix some things. And so I actually went ahead and fixed that squiggly area as well that we were seeing before, and cleaned up some of the other sketches that I had in there. But I finally got it working, and here we are. So we now have the compound curves that I was looking for, the relief cuts in my body. It is identical on both sides. So you can see I only had to do the major work on one side. So now we've actually got a pretty decent looking body. Now remember, we've left this back edge for when we start the neck, but so far I'm pretty happy. So now I think we got enough of the body in place where we can really start working on the neck, right? We've left this back area open so we can do that, and we haven't put any fillets in on these shapes that we've cut. So that way we still retain all of our harsh edge anchor points that we can anchor this neck transition to. If we applied the fillets, let's say I rounded over all of these, and let's do this one and this one, give it a 1/4 inch round over. You'll notice I lost my anchor points there. They're now rounded over. And so I actually want to retain those right now because I want to be able to connect to this dot or connect to that dot. So where do we start? Well, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to establish where the neck starts and where the portion we're going to be modeling ends, right? So I know that my neck is going to start all the way in the back of the pocket and that it needs to end, well, not the whole neck, but the part that we're modeling right now needs to end wherever the last piece is touching the neck. So if you have a wing on your guitar that's unlike mine where it actually comes out here like a fender, then you would place yours at the last point that it starts the neck. But on my case, since my wing actually touches the neck all the way out to here, I need to start my neck right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my original master sketch of my fretboard. I probably need to remember which fret that's on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in from the back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 right here. I want to unmake that a construction line. I want to turn that into a solid line. So if I select that line, hit construction, that now creates a section or a sketch that I can now highlight, right? So if I turn that back, it now highlights the entire section because the construction line wasn't interfering. But if I turn that off, now I can highlight that section. And if I come back to my model, you'll notice that now right here, I've got a perfect square that follows the contour of my body. So if I extrude that up from right here, let's go to object right here, up. you'll notice now we've got a block that we can cut out. I did make a mistake right there, and we need to create a new component first. We don't want to add a body to the body. So let's go ahead and hit create new component. Let's name it neck. And inside neck, we'll go ahead and highlight this, extrude it up. Oop, misclicked. Extrude that up to object, and we want to extrude it to that surface. Okay, so now we've got our block that we can cut out. So now we need to start envisioning, okay, what is that transition going to look like, right? So if I have a step here, let's go to my, let's go to my other design. So in mine, I've got a step. And so I don't want this transition right here between these two surfaces to feel uncomfortable. So I know that I want that line to go tangent to right here. So that way you can see there's a nice smooth transition from all angles. Now, if you didn't have a step there, then you might approach it a little differently, and I'll go over that. Let's try the step version first, and then I can show you the other one. So what I want to do is I want to sketch, well, let's open up our fretboard sketch again. There we go. So I want to sketch on this surface. Let's change that orientation. And what I want to do is I want to create an arc, or whatever shape you want your neck to be. Let's project in that face real quick. Arc here, and bring that up. Okay, now I'm going to tell this arc and this line to be midpoint, right? So you could make that lower, because that means there's going to be no taper to the neck from here to here. So if you wanted to, you could make that a little bit lower. I personally chose to, just for the simplicity of the loft, to leave from here flat with no taper. So I made that midpoint. Let's make these two horizontal. Oh, they already are. Okay. And then where do we want that to connect to? So I want that to connect to the top of this laminated top. So let's click that, project that dot in, make those coincident. Okay, now I've got a fully defined arc. So you can see that this is really what if I were to, like, let's say extrude that out, the neck starts to take shape. Now we're not going to do that yet because we're focusing just on the transition. So what I want to do is I want to take this section out, right? So if I cut this back, let's say I just cut that back all the way to there. The problem, you run into two problems. A, because the neck has a taper to it, you've got a clip here, right, where it clipped off part of the material. And then B, we need it to stop only at that line. So bring in the lofts. So what we're going to do is now we're going to finish that sketch. Actually, let's connect these two right here and these two right here, like that. Hit finish. So now we've got our main profile, and we've conveniently got the first profiles that we want to cut from. So now what we want to do is we want to sketch on this surface, and let's give ourselves a midpoint here, like that, and find the midpoint, draw a line out, and we want it to connect to that center of that arc. Now, again, this depends on your design. You may not have that feature right there, but if you can manage to design it where you have that feature, it makes this much easier. So project in that point, and I want to connect that point. And I want to project in, no, I do not want to project that in right now. I'll show you why in a minute. And then I want to, let's just finish that sketch. So now I've got one rail. So here's my triangle. I've got one rail here. I have potentially another rail here, but I'm going to need to change that a little bit. And then I don't have a rail here. So let's go ahead and sketch. Oop, wrong surface. Let's sketch on this surface. reorient ourselves here. I know I can turn that off, but sometimes it's useful. So what I want to do is I want to project in this point, and I want to project in this point. So we want this to continue back to here, and then we want an arc between here. I'm going to just draw it like that for now. Let's project in this line, and we'll make these two tangent. And then let's make these two tangent, so it's a nice smooth transition. Okay. So what I've got is this triangle here is going to wrap, this point right here is going to wrap all the way around and then curve up to that point, leaving a flat spot on the side here so it can continue all the way back into the neck pocket. And then all I need to do is I need to find a similar shape that I can use, right? So we have a triangle here. We've got 1, 2, and then a curve. Well, if we imagine that we've got a curve here, we can have a triangle connecting between here and here and have the same shape with the same amount of points. So that's going to be great. So let's go ahead and hit finish, and let's sketch. Oop, I had something selected. Move that around. Let's sketch on this surface again. This time what I want to do is I want to project in that curve, and I want to connect here to here, and I want to project in this line. So that will take care of that clip, right? Because it's going to actually connect to that side wall. Make that horizontal. Okay. And now we've got, that looks like, let's see. Let's draw a line here to here. Actually, let's do that on the first sketch and see what happens. Or not the first sketch, the second one. Actually, no, I do need to do it on that last one. So let's draw a line. I know I've projected this in, but I want this line to terminate at this sketch. So I'm drawing in a manual line there. So I've got a rail here, I've got a rail in the middle, and I've got a rail on the side that loops up. So you can see, let me hide the body, and I'll show you what's happening. Let's hide the fretboard sketch for now. So you've got this triangle shape. It's going to follow these lines, and these two are going to stop here. This one's going to keep going all the way around. So if I loft, let's go create loft from here to here. Let's show our body again, right? It's going to do its automatic version first. And let's choose our rails. We want this rail, we want this rail, and we want this rail, right? So what it's doing, again, is this triangle with a curve is sweeping up, and the top is stopping here and the bottom is sweeping up. If I hit OK, you've got a near perfect transition. Now, it's not going to be perfect here because there's still meat that it's connected to, but it is perfect at this area right here. And you can add a fillet here if you want to even smooth that out more. But I can't tell you how long it took me to figure that out. I worked on that neck transition trying 100 different ways to do precisely that, and it was deceptively simple. Like it was staring me in the eye, but I couldn't see it the entire time, and I finally figured that out. That is one smooth, clean face that goes right up. I'm extremely happy with that. So as for the other side, this again depends on your design. So what you can do, in my design, what I could do is come this arc and then keep the neck going up into this body right here. So I could actually have it sweep in and come like that. Now, what I did in mine, because I decided to leave a step there, is, let me pull up that loft. I'll show you. So this one's a little interesting because I did it a little bit differently. So I only had 2 points. But in this case, this is one of the few cases where I don't need an equal number of points. because I had my surface here, and then I had this line connecting to that dot, and this line connecting to that same dot. So it all curved to a single point. So this shape swept up and then started rotating in, and then it all merged to a single point. And you can do that. And that actually worked really well for me. And so that's how I cut out that shape. But let me show you how you could potentially do something else. So let's try this here. Let's say you wanted to have that clean sweep from here all the way in. I'm not going to go all the way through it because it's going to take me a significant amount of time, but I can show you the basic principles, and hopefully by now the rest will start to make sense. So I prefer to do lofted cuts when it comes to this rather than extrudes. Now you can do extrudes, but when you try to do those first and then cut afterwards, it can be annoying. So what I'm going to do is I need to extrude this up so I have something to cut from, right? Because that's going to taper up. So let's go ahead and sketch on this face. Let's project in that surface. Actually undo. Let's project in the lines instead. Project like that. Now I have a surface that I can extrude. So let's go up to this object. Obviously this looks terrible right now, but what that's going to do is it's going to give us some meat to cut from and make sure that our transition is smooth. So what I can do is I can sketch on this surface. Now if I were to actually do this on this particular guitar, I'd have to create some kind of plane between here and somewhere out here, right? So I could maybe even bring in these sketches and create a plane between, undo. Hold on, sorry. I could potentially create a plane between this point, and that point, right? So that way I could have something that's outside that surface. Otherwise, we're going to run into that clipping issue again. But for the sake of time, because this video is already getting pretty long, let me show you a quick example. So if I draw on this surface, and then I project in this line and this line, let's create an arc. Let's say from here to here, right? And let's project in this line, make these two tangent, and then connect the dots up here. Let's see. Oh, that needs to be horizontal. Okay, so that's constrained. So what's not is the distance here. So let's give that a distance of, let's say 1 inch. And then this is not constrained for some reason. That's fine. Figure that out in a little bit. But so I've got my first one there. That's going to cut through. So if I took that shape and I cut through, let's just pretend for a second. You can see that this has a perfect transition from here up to here. So the question is, how do we wrap that around, right? So again, just for example's sake, if I sketch on this surface, I've already got a similar structure right here. So project that in. Let's do this. Do an arc from here to here. Project that in so we can make that tangent to there. That. And let's make that 2 inches. Right? Hit OK. So now we're going to loft from here to there. And you could theoretically, if you did this right, the right way, you could loft from here to here, here to here, here to here, and all the way around to, and getting smaller as you go around. So now let's create our third rail. So let's go project in that sketch line, draw that out, and create an arc between here and here. We need to project that in. That. Create an arc. that. Now let's make these two tangent. And I need to make this tangent somehow. So let's create ourselves a triangle and we'll make those construction lines. Just make those horizontal real quick. Oop, I accidentally drew a second line. There we go. Okay, so those are defined. So now the question is, where does this line go, or what's this radius, right? So let's give that like let's see if we can do 1.5 inch radius. Actually, that's awful. So let's do 3 inch radius. That looks much better. In fact, we can even go a little larger. So if that were to say go all the way around here, you can see how you could draw that line. So this should give you enough of an example. So let's hit finish. It looks like we've got 1 rail, we've got 2 rails, and now we've got 3 rails. So let's take this, hide that body. Let's go create loft, hide that body. We want to loft from here to here, show the body again. Invalid direction. Let's see if it changes when I add the rails. There. Yep. Okay. And then we want this rail and that rail. Okay, that's throwing an error. Let me see if I bet that has to do with that line that I didn't constrain very well. Let's go here. Go back and fix that. Let's delete that. Just draw 1 line out. Pardon me here, sorry. This is what happens when you're dealing with lofts. They can be really annoying sometimes. And let's actually project this line from way back here. So that way we've got a nice straight line. Because remember, it only projects in what's visible from this plane. And let's see if we make that tangent. There we go. Now we've got a fully defined line. I think it just didn't like how it was interacting with this curve. Let's hit that. We lost one of our sketch points from there. Let's fix that real quick. Just a second. Delete that. There we go. Okay. Project that line in. Make sure that's coincident. Make sure that's horizontal. There we go. Okay, that's fixed. And let's make sure that line is good too. Let's try the loft here real quick. Bodies. Or let's go create loft. Hide the bodies. All right, that's still throwing me errors. Let's see what happens. I did this just a second ago before I taped this video, and now it's not working, of course. Maybe you can still see. I apologize for it not working. But basically what it would do is it would cut that shape out right there, and you could wrap that all the way around there. But yeah, let's undo that one. Well, like I said in previous videos, lofting can be infuriating sometimes. And if you're not really careful with how you prepare your sketches and your lines, you can run into issues like that. I was clearly trying to rush through to give you guys an example, and I messed up somewhere. Offline, I spent about an hour trying to figure out where I messed that up and couldn't replicate it. So I apologize for not being able to show you that example right now. I will probably show you some of that when it comes to the headstock. And if not, and you guys still have questions about that, I will make a dedicated video later on how to do that and make sure I do it properly. So Let me go ahead and show you my solution for my guitar, and I think that's going to be fairly common for a lot of people. In fact, I think this right here is going to cover most people's basis on it when they're designing guitars. But let me show you that little cusp that I did right there. So let me open up that original sketch of the neck profile. And what I want to do is create an arc from here to here, and then an arc from here to there. And I want those two to be tangent. Okay. That looks pretty good right about there. So what is that? 0.25 and 2.5. Nope, that needs to be midpoint to there. Okay, there we go. So now I've got that, and I've got my rails already, because this body or this line right here can act as a rail, and so can this one. So let's take this shape right here, create loft, add a rail. Let's not do chain selection. From here to there and there. Cut. Nope, I messed up again because I'm trying to rush through this. So let me sketch on this, project in these lines. I'm going to draw, just going to project in this one, and I'm going to draw from this point to this point. Make sure I'm diligent about connecting all my dots, and let's do that instead. So create loft, that rail and that rail. Oh, we need to select our second profile, which is that point. There we go. Now we do our rail from here to here. You can see it's trying to warp itself. And then from here to here. And hit OK. For me, it was that simple. I mean, granted, it took me forever to get there. Let me hide my sketches so you can see it more clearly. So I've got a clean transition from here up, and I've got a clean transition with a little bit of a relief for the finger, so it has something to grab onto. And then what I can do when we contour the back of the body, or yeah, the back side, the relief cut right here, I can draw a triangle from here, making it tangent to that right there, and sweep that all around this entire thing and get a really nice contour. So I apologize again for messing that up, but such is life with lofting, and this video is dragging on too long. So I hope that what I've been able to show you has given you some really good insights as to how to approach the neck transition. And I'm sure many of you will have many questions about your particular models, and I'll do my best to answer as many of them as possible. But thank you for coming. And in the next series, what I'm going to do is we're going to work on the neck, the rest of the neck and the headstock. So look forward to that. And we're going to finish up this back cavity right here, or the relief cut. We're going to get that done, and we're going to work on the neck and the headstock. So again, thank you for coming, and I appreciate y'all, and I'll see you next time.